The opinions of, I guess, the ethic basis, morality, if you will, of reproduction NES games that weren't released, I guess, in your region, or that were not released at all. Where do you stand on this, Ian?
The people who... Okay, first of all, I look at this as different than something like a burn. But let me... So, the first thing is, the people who were originally going to make money off of this are no longer making money off of it. Whether you buy a legitimate copy of the game secondhand from Japan in the Japanese language, or you get an English translation reproduction card to play the game.
Sure.
Okay? So I don't really feel like you're stealing any money from anyone. I don't necessarily feel like people should necessarily profit off of someone else's work, although I also don't feel like paying them a little bit for soldering, wiring,
for their service.
Flashing in the service is outlandish.
Sure.
I don't think that's a problem. I do take slightly more issue with destroying cartridges to make repros,
like destroying a Batman, Return of the Joker to make a Mr. Gimmick, which I think is despicable.
There's plenty of things that you can make from very common cartridges.
Sure.
Like double dribbles and Top Guns. So it's not a clear-cut yes or no answer. I think it's, you know, a very multifaceted answer. But at the base of it, if you want me to say, do I think there's a problem with someone playing a reproduction Sweet Home on their Nintendo? Something that you can't pass off as something that it isn't because it never existed. I don't have a problem with that at the base of it. I really don't.
Well, let's talk about who does it actually hurt. You alluded to it. It's something I actually brought up in my, humorously, over the top in a way, in my Flintstones Surprise Dinosaur Peak review, how I was commenting about how you should emulate Flintstones Dinosaur Peak because scalpers have ruined the market on that. And so you're not really hurting anyone but those scalpers. You're not hurting... Taito doesn't give a shit. You know, they're out of that secondary market. The only ones it really affects are the people making those repro games and people that are involved with retro game stores. That's the only possible parties that it could affect.
And like I said, here's the thing. The pricing has got to get to a point where I think it's justifiable, where the person who's making it is getting compensated for their actual labor, because I know people who do this, and
Sure.
it takes work, and their parts. But, you know, you don't, like I said, you don't want to making money off something that isn't theirs. Here's a good example. Look at texts that have entered the public domain, okay? One that I really like, the Divine Comedy, okay? Public domain, right? But you can go to Barnes & Noble and you can buy it. And you can buy it. And
right.
Why? Because they had the foresight to fucking print it in a large volume and bind it and give it to you in a nice hardback.
Yeah, they're taking the financial initiative and risk and putting it out.
But they're only selling something like that. And the Divine Comedy is a thick book. You could kill an intruder with it, and it's tall. They're only charging like $10 for it. So sure. I don't feel bad because I'm not paying them for the Divine Comedy. I'm paying them to have a bound edition of it. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, I think that's okay. And
the author who escapes me, when I read Dante's Inferno, he's dead. I don't think he's around anymore. So
Dante Alighieri.
Yeah, so he's gone. So he can't get any money. So it's the same thing.
Dead a long time.
Who gets affected? This is the way I look at it. This is kind of the way I always looked at piracy of music. And the way I justified, at least to me, was I am not going out and buying the best of the disco era CD. If you put a gun to my head, I won't. So if I download a few disco songs, that's not money that would have went somewhere. It's in a void, as far as I'm concerned. That's the way I always looked at it.
I don't know. See, that to me is a bit trickier.
I'm not going out to even a secondhand store and buying the disco songs. I would just go without. Honestly, that's how I look at it. With the games, now with the games, you can say I would have gone without too, but I think it's a little bit different because, at least with games versus music, in games you spend a lot more time with games than with a 3-minute song, and it's a more interactive experience. And if you really want Mr. Gimmick, like on a system to play, like me, I think your options are limited when it comes to that.
Sure. So, you know, repro carts of something that was clearly never released here,
Mr. Gimmick,
with the caveats that I'd mentioned before, I really have no massive problem with it.
Sure.
You know, don't overcharge for it, but at the same point in time, don't be the person who overpays for it. And kind of be mindful of what you're buying. If you know that they had to sacrifice something rare and hard to come by for it, then don't. You know, but as time goes on, we're gonna find mass-produced boards that are gonna allow people to do reproductions easier.
Well, you can buy them now.
Yeah, I know.
Mass-produced, but you can buy them.
But I mean, eventually you'll get them. I'm sure eventually you'll get them cheaper.
You think you'll get to the point where you'll have a board ready to go with a device? You can just flash anything you want to it?
Yes,
easily?
I do.
You think you'll get to that point?
Yeah. So I really think that's possible. I think we're going to get to the point where we don't have to worry about what it's damaging, and then you just have to make sure that, you're okay with, the transaction that's going on. If you feel comfortable with it, then go for it.
So I'm distracted. I don't see my Mr. Gimmick cart, so I'm freaking out here.
I don't know. Jesus Christ. Can we focus on the podcast for a minute?
No!